Hey everybody, it's Friday and you are here live from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, the land of great white sharks and tornadoes this week. It's been a little disastery, but I'm so glad that you're here with me today as we lay down some practical wisdom for nonprofit accidental techies everywhere. Before we get into today's topic, I just want to say thanks again for everyone who joined in on last week's special guest edition of these Facebook Live sessions. I talked about online payment processing, demystified some terms and processes, like what happens when a donor makes a gift online. Lots of people tuned in and lots of people have watched after the fact. I've also gotten folks pinging me on social media or sending me emails saying that it was a really valuable session. So if you didn't see it, it's the video before this one. And if you did see it and you can think of anyone else in your world who might benefit from spending a few minutes learning about this stuff in a fun and casual way, send this video on along to them. I really appreciate it. I'm planning another dynamic duo session in August, so stay tuned for that. I'll have more information as we firm up some details. So today, small organizations. Hey Scott, hey Wendy. Wendy, I'm glad to see you here. Small nonprofit organizations, right? It's super fresh in my mind for two reasons. The first is because I see examples of small organizations' special struggles all the time. And I see them in, people that I'm working with, and I also see them in some social media groups that I participate in and kind of listen to. And one of them, Scott Paley is here today, and one of them Scott is involved with, which is Thriving Nonprofit Facebook group with Joan Gary. And there are some phenomenal conversations, supportive, informed, kind of community building conversations that happen particularly around small organizations. So that's a great place. If you don't visit there, you should go do a search on Facebook and join that group. And then the second is the 31st Century Nonprofit Facebook group, where lots of, again, supportive conversations happen. And lots of times it is about challenges with small nonprofit organizations. So this is in my feed all the time. I've worked for small nonprofit organizations, so I feel the burn. I've had those jobs. And I also just had a conversation with a client of mine, a woman named Tony, who works for a small social justice nonprofit organization. So this is an administrative team of like 3 people. And I'm talking everybody, a bunch of volunteers, everybody's close to burning out. And she was sharing with me the struggle that she had trying to get an internal project, like get the gas in the tank and get it moving. Tony has also worked with large organizations. And, she made the observation that it's just harder. It's just different in a small organization. And it kind of got me really thinking about today's Facebook Live session. What are those challenges that are particularly unique to smaller organizations? And just for context, when I say small, I'm talking about annual budget size of probably less than $500,000. And some of you may be watching this thinking, I would love to have $500,000 as an annual operating budget for my organization. And I know that scale goes way down. There are executive directors at small organizations right now who aren't taking a salary, who literally are volunteering. And maybe they have a full-time job and that's what's funding the work of the organization. So put yourself in that position for a second. And generally speaking, I would say that the main difference in challenges between a giant organization and a smaller nonprofit is that there are no shock absorbers. You're driving a car in a small organization and you feel every single bump. Nancy Schwartz is here. Oh, Nancy, I'm glad to see you here. Please chime in. Unique situations or challenges for smaller organizations, especially for you around engagement, branding, marketing, and communications. So you got them shock absorbers, something that a large org wouldn't even feel, wouldn't even realize happened, can put the small org by the side of the road. You feel every single little bump that the larger guys don't, and things that infrastructure or funding or whatever asset a larger org has to throw at a challenge, the smaller organization, the couple of you that are there kind of look at each other like, we're out of gas. I don't know how to solve this problem. So everything that happens in the normal day-to-day of a nonprofit organization, the normal day-to-day in a nonprofit, is felt strongly by smaller teams. Really has a ripple effect across weeks, months, sometimes years for smaller organizations. And as I was thinking about this topic, I came up with 3 really common challenges that I see over and over again in smaller organizations. And we're going to talk about those for a couple of minutes. And I've got what I'm calling my 2-hour quick fix for each of these challenges. So you're going to hear the scenario, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to fix it. All right, so let's dive in. The first common challenge for small nonprofit organizations is everything is manual. Everything is on paper. Everybody's got their own spreadsheet. Sometimes it's living in people's heads. Post-it notes are how you run your organization, right? And even if you have a database or online tools or constant contact, it's old, or you don't trust the data that's in there. So that's a super common scenario. And my 2-hour quick fix for that one is, first of all, stop the judgment. Take a non-judgmental inventory of where you keep your information. Information about your program, information about your sponsors, information about participants, donors, supporters, event attendees. Just figure out all those nooks and crannies inside somebody's desktop where that stuff is living now. And again, frame of no judgment. You are on a detective mission. You've got a little hunt that you want to dig all this stuff up. So you're going to look around the organization and you're going to document where stuff is now. And the goal here is for you to just find a way to cut that number of places down. Even if all you can eliminate is one spot, one nook or cranny where information is going, things are happening in a manual process. If you can eliminate some of those places, you're on the right road to actually having your arms around your organization's information. Non-judgmental. And if you hate your database, or it's about to fall apart, or you're only putting membership information in there, but everything else is living someplace else, don't use it at all. Just don't use it. Use Excel, share them around, use Google Drive and Google Sheets. The only advice I give you, if you're not going to use a database at all, you're simply going to say, everything is in here. We've made agreements in my team of 2 that every piece of information is going to go into this Excel spreadsheet. Just do yourself a favor and back it up. If it's on your local machine, back it up to the cloud. Get a Dropbox account. Back up stuff that's even shared in Google. So if your challenge is everything is manual and it's spread out who knows where, non-judgmental inventory, write down where it all is, make some agreements about eliminating a couple of those stash spots, and you'll be on the road to a bit more organization and clarity. So that's challenge 1. Challenge 2, there's no redundancy. It's me, myself, and I, or it's me and her and him, or they handle that. And everybody's got a very full plate, and there's nothing written down about what everybody's doing. So there's no redundancy. When somebody wins the lottery, or they leave your organization, or the volunteer who always managed your website goes away, you have no idea how to keep that train running. I see this all the time. Our social media volunteer left and I can't log in and manage our Facebook page. It happens all the time. So, you know, when that person leaves, it's doubly tough because not only do you have to fill that vacancy, but there's no way to train that new person properly. Hey, Kathy, so glad that you're here with us this afternoon. So here's the quick fix if there's no redundancy, because you can't, like, you know, twin someone and make two people kind of share that same brain. Non-judgmental frame, again, it is what it is. Make a list of what each person does on a generally routine basis. Once a day, once a week, once a month, whatever it is. And note any login, username, and password information. And if someone has contact information for your accounting software, you use QuickBooks and your bookkeeper splits, do you even know how to log in there? Or do you even know who to call to make sure that you, as the executive director, have access to that QuickBooks program? Because you're going to need it. So non-judgmental, this is a great staff meeting activity, right? You probably have regular staff meetings, even if it's you and one other person running the whole organization. Sit down, use the staff meeting time in a productive way, and make that list of what everybody's doing, how they get into that system, and who they call if there's a problem. That is like the treasure chest of redundancy solutions right there. And I would also say, bonus points, if once a quarter, right, make an appointment on your staff meeting day or otherwise put it in your calendar that you're going to circulate that list and you're going to get people to update it. Oh, we don't use Constant Contact anymore, we use MailChimp. Update it on your sheet. So that's situation number 2, is there's no redundancy. And often people leave with the keys. The third common scenario or challenge that smaller organizations face on the daily is unclear roles and responsibilities. Now, this certainly isn't just a problem within the small organization spectrum. However, it is felt much more painfully in smaller orgs. And I kind of call this jokingly like the "I thought you were doing that" syndrome, or "we both did it" itis, where even in a tiny team of 2 or 3 people, you'd think that everybody kind of knows what's going on. Oh no, 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 no. So it often happens that there's gaps. I thought she was doing it, she thought he was doing it. They both thought I was doing it. I had no idea that anything was assigned to me. So whoops, let that deadline, you know, slip past. You'd assume that everybody knows what's going on, but that is not the case. So here's our 2-hour quick fix. This is probably less than 2 hours. The next time, don't worry about what happened last time. Don't look in the rearview mirror. Forward face it, non-judgmental. The next time you are dividing up responsibilities of any kind in your tiny team, whether it's with your board, volunteers, paid staff, what have you, you're going to get granular. Put names of the responsible party on a list next to the things that they own, okay? Literally, put it in writing. If you assign something to somebody else, make sure they know about it. And if you really want to get crazy, you could put due dates on those things. You know, Maureen, I'm assigning you to clean up our email list. We're moving from Constant Contact to MailChimp, and I need you to pull everybody out of Constant Contact, clean that list up, get it uploaded and tested in MailChimp, maybe resegmented or tagged, because we've got a campaign that's going out starting September 1. I can do that as long as I know that in your mind you've assigned that to me. And I don't know which issue is worse, if it's 2 people do something and it's just inefficient, or nobody does it because everybody thought it was somebody else's job. So unclear roles and responsibilities, write it down, communicate around it. It may seem generally harder and kind of scrappier to be in a small organization, and certainly this is not even the beginning of a list of challenges that nonprofits face and have a harder time dealing with than their larger, well-funded organizations around the corner. But lots of times, larger orgs have the same exact struggles that you do. You think that they've got fantastic communication. They do not. You think they've got a CRM or a database that they love and trust the data that's inside. They do not. So the grass is kind of always greener, right? There are definitely some benefits to being part of a smaller organization. There was a Salesforce Fundamentals of Marketing and Engagement report that just came out that focused on the differences between smaller and larger organizations. You can Google that, or I'll put a link to that to download that report in the comments when we're finished today. And they called out a real big problem with large organizations that small folks don't deal with on such a big scale, which is lack of internal cooperation and resistance to change. I'm not saying that the smaller folks don't have lack of cooperation. I'm not saying that everybody loves change who works in a smaller organization, but we've had to be more agile. And it's really easier to convince one or two other people about the need for a change and getting people on board and cooperating than it is a team of 202 people. You can turn that boat much more quickly. Change is awful hard in a large organization. It's painful, it's costly, it's time consuming. Often you get halfway into the change and leadership tells you you need to swing in the other direction again. So there can be certainly a level of frustration dealing with the larger organizations than the small folks have to deal with. Too many tools and systems is another situation. You may say, I don't have an X. I don't have a CRM. I use Excel. Okay, as long as it's backed up, that's great. Large nonprofit organizations might have 3 CRMs that all are being used, sometimes by the same people for different reasons, sometimes for different teams, and that gets really expensive and really messy really quickly. So you don't have that problem. Phew, you have Excel, and you're going to make some ground rules and guidelines about how you and your team are using it. Much simpler. And finally, a challenge that large organizations have that the smaller folks don't is if you have a $100 million annual budget, you have to raise that money every single year. It can feel just as daunting for some of us to raise $200,000, but imagine the stress that you would have if your organization grew, scaled, 10 years in the future, now you're a $50 million a year organization. Congratulations. Where are you going to come up with that funding year after year? What kind of an investment in people or systems or conversion rates do you need to have to keep that giant boat running? Huge difference of scale there. So, it's not all bed of roses to be in a small organization, but there are some things that we don't have to deal with at all or on any type of a scale that a larger organization would need to deal with. So it's a different level of pressure, right? So if it's manual, non-judgmental inventory, write stuff down, make agreements. If you don't have redundancy, write down what people are doing on the regular and get logins and passwords and the URLs to get to some of those things, and clarify roles and responsibilities as you're assigning things to multiple people. Next week, it's August. It's going to be August 2nd. We talked way back. I think the first Facebook Live I ever did was in December of last year, and it's a very popular video. People continue to watch it regularly, about radio silence from your vendor, right? What happens if your partner goes quiet and you cannot get an answer out of them? I'm going to talk about that again next week with a different spin. So if you watch that video, come on back next Friday at 12:30. If you didn't, go back to the very first video from December of 2018, give it a watch, and then come on back and join the conversation next week, because radio silence, ghosting is a phenomenon, and I'm personally on a mission to stamp it out because I think people just don't know what to say. They think if they just ignore it, someone's going to get the hint. It doesn't work that way. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks again for your following and your liking and your sharing and your comments. I will put a link to get that Salesforce report and in the comments as soon as we wrap. And then next week, we're going to talk about ghosting. Not in the Casper-friendly ghost way. So I wish all of you a wonderful rest of your day and an awesome weekend ahead. And I will see you next week, same time, 12:30 Eastern. Thanks, everybody. Talk with you then. Bye.